Right, hello and welcome in all of you wonderful people. We are 11 days away from the NFL draft. Very exciting times. Today we're going to be focusing on the top 10 prospects for the edge rusher position. Very interesting edge rusher class. We've already done one video like this where we did the top 10 interior offensive linemen. These are my own personal rankings. If you want to check out the top 10 for the interior offensive linemen, you can access that through the 2021 NFL draft playlist. Just click through to the channel. You'll find the playlist there. You can enjoy that with all kinds of other draft content. We've got 7-round mock drafts. We've got player profiles. We've got several player profiles of players that we're going to be talking about today. Kwity Paye, Jalen Phillips, Azeez Ojulari was the most recent one. You can go check out all that after, of course, this video. And then if you like the NFL draft and you want to talk more about prospects, don't forget to subscribe. I don't ask for that very often, but I think if you're really into the NFL draft like I am, just talking about players and fits and all that kind of stuff, join me in the conversation. I always like to have more people to bounce ideas off of and talk NFL and football and what have you. So, all right, having said all of that, as I've already said in the video, very interesting edge rusher class. There's not a certified blue chip prospect in this group. At least it's up for debate. We don't have a home run player going in the top 5 like a Chase Young or a Joey Bosa or a Nick Bosa. That doesn't exist here. This is not the year for that. Now, if you want an edge rusher that has a very unique skill set, a very well-rounded toolbox that may just need some coaching, maybe a high-risk, high-reward type of player, you look up and down the board, even beyond the top 10, there's plenty of guys that fit that profile. What we're going to be looking at here today is a very interesting list of guys that I don't think we're going to see any of them go in the top 10. And that's kind of strange given it's the one of the, the premium positions in the league, right? You could debate that the top 3 are quarterback, offensive tackle, and edge rusher, and maybe corner. Some people like to think that because it is a passing league. But as far as the edge rusher position goes, as I've said, I don't think you're going to see any guys going in the top 10. This isn't going to be a situation where we're going to see one of these guys get reached for. I don't think we're going to see a repeat of a couple years ago where there was very good edge rushers that could have went top 10, but the first one off the board was Clelin Ferrell to the Raiders at 4 overall. I don't think that there's going to be a, hey, I'm Mike Mayock, I'm the smartest guy in the room situation going on here, because it just doesn't strike me as that, right? Because there's a lot more players at other positions that I think you could have confidence in spending a top 10 or even a top 15 selection on, as opposed to some of these guys who come with either injury baggage or concerns about productivity. And we'll address all of those briefly here. So the way I decided to do this, as opposed to the previous top 10 video where we covered the interior offensive linemen, was just to share the top 10 right out of the gate instead of having to worry about plugging names on the board one by one. So you can tell me in the comments if you prefer this format where you can just follow along with the entire video. Maybe you get your click, check out the top 10 and bounce. Don't stick for the explanations. I'm fine with that. Or maybe you like the one after the other countdown, if you will. So that can be something that you guys let me know. So for my top 10, my own personal top 10, I don't have too many reasons why that these guys are ordered this way, other than maybe just personal preference. But I will start at the top with Jalen Phillips. I think that this guy could sneakily be the best overall edge rusher in the class if it wasn't for the injury concerns. And a lot of it has to do with the concussion. What if he gets one concussion and he's done? You burned a first-round pick on something that you knew could potentially happen. It's the risk-reward situation that we mentioned. Jalen Phillips, redshirt junior, 6'5", 260 pounds, ran a 4.5740. Those are all pro day numbers. 8 sacks last year, 15.5 tackles for loss. Great 2020 season. You got to feel like UCLA is asking themselves, is that the player that we could have had, had things gone differently? And of course, the red flag is the injuries, and that's why he's going to be bumped down draft boards significantly. And I think you're going to see a similar situation with Caleb Farley, even though doctors have said that his back checks out. He's already had 2 back surgeries. And then you've got a guy like Jalen Phillips, where we are in a league where concussions, I don't want to say are the norm, but you run into them more often than you would like to, and that is concerning, especially for a guy that plays in the trenches. So, but if it wasn't for all that, I think Jalen Phillips would probably be a top 10 selection. It's just the medical concerns are too good. But the things that I like about him is just the athleticism, right? The explosiveness, the One of the things that I heard about during an interview where I believe it was a PFF 2-for-1 Drafts was doing a podcast, and they interviewed either Quincy Roche or Gregory Rousseau. They were talking about Jalen Phillips. When he runs with the skill position players, and that's kind of impressive. So he's my number one, Jalen Phillips. If it wasn't for the injury concerns, I'd be way more confident about it. Number 2 on my board is Kwity Paye from Michigan. He was Bruce Feldman's number 1 player on his Freaks list. If you've never heard of that, I suggest looking that up. It's a great read every year. The athleticism and it's just off the charts. Senior year, 6'2", 261, ran a 4.57. Once again, those are all pro days. I think the thing that is sort of keeping him from being elevated in draft discussions is the production. This wasn't the kind of season that I thought, or, well, that I thought, but a lot of people thought that he was going to have. A lot of people thought he would take off this year, and that just didn't happen. I think what you need is somebody, or, a team or a coach to get a hold of Kwity Paye and mold him into the potential that he has shown on the field. He has the athleticism. He has the freakish ability. There's a reason he's number 1 on Bruce Feldman's list. Somebody just has to coach that up and put it all together, and then you probably get a blue chip prospect out of him that way. Number 3 is Azeez Ojulari from Georgia. I've already talked about him. You can click through to the playlist that I've mentioned. He is the most recent prospect that I did a profile on. Redshirt sophomore, 6'2", 249, ran a 4.6140. Instinctive, explosive, looks the part. Played in a 3-3-5, so he's got some versatility to him. Probably is better suited as a 3-4 outside linebacker. At number 4, we have Jason Owe from Penn State. Excellent pro day. Redshirt sophomore, 6'4", 257. Ran a 4.37 40 time. That is electric. No sacks in 2020 is a problem for people that are worried about production. I, on the other hand, with this guy, am not. I think the athleticism trumps production, especially in this year. He is a 1-year starter, so it is a high-risk, high-reward type of pick. I think if he has the production, like if he came out of the season with 8 sacks, let's say 8.5 sacks, he's probably in discussion to be one of the first edge rushers to come off the board. Potentially could still be. We don't know how teams rank all these guys. So somebody could have him as the number 1 edge rusher. Somebody could have him as a top 10 prospect. Totally possible. It could happen. But I think that if he has the numbers to back it up, he probably is looking to be a top 10 selection in that reality. Number 5 is Gregory Rousseau, the other Miami edge rusher, redshirt sophomore, 6'5", 266, ran a 4.67. Again, these are all pro day numbers. He was a 2020 opt-out, so we have no recent film on him. I'm not concerned about that. What I am concerned about is that we didn't get to see him piggyback off of his 15.5 sack season that he had in 2019. Dane Brugler of The Athletic comps Gregory Rousseau as potentially having the ceiling of a Chandler Jones, and Chandler Jones is an elite edge rusher. And there's a lot of discussion these past few months about Gregory Rousseau possibly being one of the first names to be called off the board. It's not, the fact that I have him at 5 is not a detriment to him or his skill set or anything like that. It's just that that's how numbers work. You have to put somebody at 1, you have to put somebody at 3. Somebody's got to go at 5. This is just my own personal order of preference, but it is within the realm of possibility that Gregory Rousseau could be the first one called. I think anybody in the top 5, especially from my list, in my opinion, could be the first edge rusher to be drafted in 2 weeks. Moving on to number 6, we have Joseph Asad from Texas. Junior, 6'3", 256, ran a 4.62 40. He's another 3-4 edge type, but he's always around the ball, especially even when he's not involved directly into the play. He's just one of those things, where you watch a game and you're like, whoa, there's him again. Whoa, he's there again. Hey, he's involved again. One of those things where you're like, maybe you're trying to pay attention to someone else, and this is the guy that keeps popping up. Next, we have Joe Tryon at number 7 from Washington. Guy looks the part. Really fills out a Washington jersey. Very nice. Redshirt junior, 6'5", 259, ran a 4.65 40. Another 2020 opt-out. Lined up off ball, sort of a hybrid player. So if you're looking for an interesting chess piece that has some versatility, you can sort of disguise coverages and things like that. Definitely can drop back and cover people in the flat. So he's definitely somebody that can be utilized in a number of ways. Number 8, Carlos Basham from Wake Forest, redshirt senior, 6'3", 274 pounds, ran a 4.59 40. He was better in 2019 in the 11 games that he played than he was in 2020. in the 5 games that he played. Now, he missed some time, I believe, due to a knee injury and a COVID situation. But I think if he had more games under his belt this year, it probably would have looked better. But there's nothing really, I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. You know, we've talked several times about production already here. But I do think that he would have benefited greatly from the scouting perspective if he would have had more games to showcase his stuff. Likely projects as a 4-3 defensive end. Somebody that you could definitely have in like round 2, round 3. Next, we have Ronnie Perkins at number 9 from Oklahoma. Junior, 6'2", 253 pounds, ran a 4.71 40. He improved over all of his 3 years as a starter. Every single season, he improved statistically across the board. But the red flag for him is going to be that he was suspended for 6 games due to a failed drug test. So he missed the college football playoff game the previous year, and then the other 5 games were the 2020 regular season. So he didn't get to play as many games this year, but he did, you know, have an impressive second half. I think it was like 10.5 tackles for loss. But the suspension hurts. The failed drug test is a problem. That's going to be a reason why he falls down draft boards. Had a nice pro day. And last but not least, at number 10, we have Peyton Turner from Houston. Senior, 6'5", 270 pounds. Don't have 40 time information for him for some reason. Maybe he just opted not to do the workout. Dude does have an impressive wingspan, 84 inches wingspan. That is like 4 inches on the next closest guy. Probably a good rotational piece early on. Is going to need some time to develop before he can be an everyday starter. So somebody looking for depth on probably late day 2, can nab somebody like Peyton Turner and utilize him as a proper chess piece at the edge rusher position. That is the top 10. My personal top 10 for the edge rusher position, a little bit about each player. Let me know who you think in the comments below. Who is the best edge rusher in this class? Who would you like your team to target? Maybe you're not a fan of the Minnesota Vikings and you just stumbled across this video by chance. NFL draft is for everybody. That's the great thing about it. So even if you're not a fan of the Vikings and your team needs an edge rusher, let me know. Is there a guy on this list that you see as a potential candidate for your team? That's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.